Emily sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting slanted shadows across the room. She stared at the empty chair across from her, the one Daniel hadn't occupied in weeks. His absence was palpable, a silent reminder of the growing chasm between them. Daniel had always been a man of few words, but lately, his silence felt deliberate, almost cruel. He would leave for work before dawn and return long after dinner, his briefcase in one hand and his phone in the other. Emily had stopped asking about his day. His answers were always the same, vague, dismissive, and tinged with irritation. She sighed, pushing the mug aside, and glanced at the clock. It was nearly noon, and she hadn't even bothered to change out of her pajamas. The freelance article she was supposed to be writing lay untouched on her laptop, the cursor blinking mockingly at her. Writing used to be her escape, her way of making sense of the world. Now it felt like just another chore, another reminder of how disconnected she felt from everything and everyone around her. The sound of a key turning in the lock startled her. Daniel walked in, his tie loosened and his face drawn. He barely glanced at her as he headed straight for the fridge, pulling out a bottle of water. "Long morning?" Emily asked, her voice softer than she intended. Daniel shrugged, taking a long sip. "Just busy. You know how it is." She did know how it was. Busy. Always busy. Too busy to talk, too busy to listen, too busy to notice how much she was struggling. She wanted to scream, to shake him and demand that he see her, really see her. But she didn't. Instead, she nodded and forced a smile. "I was thinking we could have dinner together tonight," she said, her tone hopeful. "Maybe order in from that Italian place you like?" Daniel hesitated, his eyes flicking to his phone as it buzzed on the counter. "I can't. I've got a late meeting." Rain check. Emily's heart sank, but she nodded again. "Sure. Rain check." He grabbed his phone and headed for the door, pausing only to grab his briefcase. "Don't wait up," he called over his shoulder before disappearing into the hallway. The apartment felt emptier after he left, the silence pressing in on her from all sides. Emily stood and walked to the window, staring out at the bustling street below. Couples walked hand in hand, friends laughed over coffee, and children played in the park. Life was happening all around her, but she felt stuck, like she was watching it all through a pane of glass. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She wasn't expecting anyone, and Daniel never forgot his keys. Curious, she padded to the door and opened it to find a man standing there, a guitar case slung over his shoulder. "Hi," he said with a warm smile. "I'm Liam. I just moved in next door. Thought I'd introduce myself." Emily blinked, momentarily caught off guard by his easy charm. He was tall, with tousled brown hair and eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 stories. His smile was genuine, the kind that made you want to smile back even if you didn't feel like it. "Emily," she said, returning his smile. "Welcome to the building." "Thanks," Liam replied, shifting the guitar case on his shoulder. "I'm a musician, so, sorry in advance if you hear me practicing. I promise I'm not terrible." Emily laughed, the sound surprising even herself. "I'll keep that in mind." They stood there for a moment, the silence comfortable rather than awkward. Liam's gaze softened as he studied her, and for the first time in months, Emily felt seen. "Well, I should let you get back to your day," Liam said finally, stepping back. "But if you ever need anything or just want to complain about my playing, you know where to find me." "I'll keep that in mind too," Emily said, watching as he turned and walked down the hall. She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. It was just a friendly introduction, nothing more. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of something she thought she'd lost: hope. As she returned to the kitchen, her eyes fell on Daniel's empty chair. The cracks in their marriage had been growing for months, but now, for the first time, she wondered if they were too deep to repair. And as much as the thought terrified her, it also filled her with a strange sense of clarity. Something had to change. She just didn't know what or who would be the catalyst. The days blurred together, each one indistinguishable from the last. Emily tried to fill the hours with work, but her thoughts kept drifting to the empty chair across from her and the man who rarely occupied it. Daniel's absence had become a constant, a shadow that loomed over every corner of their apartment. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily found herself standing in front of her laptop, staring at a blank screen. The article she was supposed to be writing remained untouched, the words eluding her like smoke. Frustrated, she closed the laptop and grabbed her coat. Maybe a walk would clear her head. The crisp autumn air was a welcome relief as she stepped outside. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that felt almost peaceful. She wandered aimlessly, her hands buried in her pockets, until she found herself in front of a small cafe she'd never noticed before. The warm glow of the lights inside beckoned her, and before she could second-guess herself, she pushed the door open. The cafe was cozy, with mismatched furniture and the faint scent of cinnamon in the air. Emily ordered a latte and found a seat by the window, watching as the world outside moved in slow motion. "Mind if I join you?" The voice startled her, and she looked up to see Liam standing there, a cup of coffee in hand. He was dressed casually, his guitar case slung over his shoulder, and his smile was as warm as the cafe's atmosphere. "Of course," Emily said, gesturing to the seat across from her. Liam sat down, setting his guitar case beside him. "I come here sometimes to work on new songs. It's a good place to think." "I can see why," Emily replied, glancing around. "It's nice." They fell into an easy conversation, talking about everything and nothing. Liam was a natural storyteller, his words painting vivid pictures of his travels and the people he'd met along the way. Emily found herself laughing more than she had in months, the weight on her chest lifting with each passing moment. "What about you?" Liam asked, leaning forward slightly. "What's your story?" Emily hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "There's not much to tell," she said finally. "I'm a writer, but lately, it feels like I'm just going through the motions." Liam nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Sometimes we get so caught up in the routine that we forget why we started in the first place." His words struck a chord, and Emily felt a lump form in her throat. She looked away, her gaze falling on a couple sitting a few tables over. They were holding hands, their heads close together as they whispered and laughed. "It's hard," she admitted quietly, "when the person you love feels like a stranger." Liam didn't respond immediately, his eyes searching hers. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but steady. "You deserve to be seen, Emily. To be heard." The sincerity in his words caught her off guard, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. She wanted to believe him, to believe that she was worthy of more than the life she was living. But the guilt was already creeping in, a reminder of the vows she'd made and the promises she'd yet to break. "I should go," she said abruptly, standing up. "It's getting late." Liam stood as well, his expression unreadable. "Of course. I'll walk you home." They walked in silence, the distance between them both comforting and charged. When they reached her building, Emily turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For tonight." Liam smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Any time, Emily." She watched as he walked away, his figure disappearing into the night. The apartment felt colder when she stepped inside, the emptiness more pronounced. Daniel was still out, his absence a stark contrast to the warmth she'd felt just moments ago. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. She knew she was standing on the edge of something that could either save her or destroy her. But as she lay down and stared at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was already falling. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Emily tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting to Liam and the conversation they'd shared at the cafe. She told herself it was just a moment of weakness, a fleeting connection that didn't mean anything. But deep down she knew it was more than that. Daniel, meanwhile, remained oblivious. He came and went like a ghost, his presence in their home barely registering. Emily tried to reach out to bridge the gap between them, but every attempt was met with the same indifference. One evening, after another silent dinner, Emily couldn't take it anymore. She waited until Daniel had retreated to the living room before following him, her heart pounding in her chest. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. Daniel looked up from his phone, his expression one of mild annoyance. "About what?" "About us," Emily replied, sitting down across from him. "About how we've become strangers living under the same roof." Daniel sighed, setting his phone aside. "Emily, I'm just tired. Work has been crazy, and I don't have the energy for this right now." "That's just it," Emily said, her frustration boiling over. "You're always tired, always busy. But what about me? What about us? Don't you care anymore?" Daniel's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Emily thought he might actually engage. But then he shook his head and stood up. "I'm going to bed," he said, his tone final. "We'll talk about this later." Emily watched as he walked away, her heart breaking all over again. She felt invisible, like her feelings didn't matter. And in that moment, she realized she couldn't keep living like this. The next day, she found herself standing outside Liam's door, her hand raised to knock. She hesitated, her mind racing with doubts. But then she thought of Daniel's indifference, of the emptiness that had become her life, and she knocked. Liam opened the door, his expression one of surprise and concern. "Emily, is everything okay?" She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "No, nothing is okay." Liam stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. His apartment was warm and inviting, filled with the scent of coffee and the sound of soft music playing in the background. He led her to the couch, sitting down beside her. "Talk to me," he said gently. And she did. She told him everything. About Daniel's emotional distance, about her loneliness, about the cracks in their marriage that seemed too deep to repair. Liam listened without judgment, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm of her emotions. When she finally finished, there was a long silence. Then Liam reached out, his hand brushing against hers. "You deserve more than this, Emily," he said softly. "You deserve someone who sees you, who hears you, who loves you the way you should be loved." Emily looked into his eyes, and for the first time in months, she felt seen. Really seen. The connection between them was undeniable, a spark that had been waiting to ignite. But as much as she wanted to give in, to let herself fall into the warmth of his gaze, she knew she couldn't. Not yet. "I need to figure things out," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "With Daniel. With myself." Liam nodded, his expression understanding. "I get it. But know this, I'm here for you. No matter what." Emily felt a lump form in her throat, and she nodded, unable to speak. She stood up, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. "Thank you," she said finally. "For listening. For understanding." Liam walked her to the door, his presence a comforting warmth at her side. As she stepped out into the hallway, she turned to look at him one last time. "Take care of yourself, Emily," he said softly. She nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of everything she was feeling. As she walked back to her apartment, she knew that her life was about to change. The question was, would it be for better or for worse?